So now I wanted to talk about contracts. I'm a lawyer, and then obviously I need to talk about contracts. This is not a legal advice. This is not a legal advice. My name is Mike Koziol. I run a 100K playbook for consultants. I am a lawyer, but this is not a legal advice. But this is something that you really need to pay attention to when it comes to contracts. Every single client should you should sign a contract with every single client. Like if you're a consultant, you have to sign a consulting contract with your client. It doesn't have to be 15 pages long. It can be one pager, two pagers, and that's it. But you have to sign it. The reason why you want it is kind of, there's a couple of reasons. Number one is that you will protect yourself. You will protect yourself from, especially in North America, from refunds and people trying to take advantage of you and saying that you haven't delivered or whatever. When there's no contract, there's no way to prove what was the scope agreed on, and then you can only use screenshots and emails, and but that's not always binding. And Stripe or PayPal, whatever, or bank can just kind of side on the side of the payer, the credit card holder, your client, and then you lose the money to deliver the work, and then you lose the money, right? Um, that's number one. Number two is like, you know, from a business forecasting perspective, and like actually and having a business and looking at it from a professional way, professional perspective. If you ever think about selling a business, if you don't have contracts in your business, that business is hard, like it's really hard to sell, because it's really very, it's really we calculate number of contracts and the amounts of contracts in the business to evaluate and assign value to that business, like how valuable it is based on the contract. If there's no contract and someone is paying you money randomly month to month without a contract, then we are not really taking that into account, because you cannot guarantee or prevent someone from leaving if there's no contract and there's no rules and terms and conditions. So from that perspective, it's very important as well. And another thing is that having a contract allows you to have a really good conversation around expectations, right? And so, um, very often contracts are people are either not signing contracts at all, or if they do have a contract, those contracts are very vague, as in like, we'll build a strategy. Like, what is a strategy? We'll build a campaign. What is a campaign, right? So when you have that kind of vagueness in your contracts, then what it does, it opens up a room for you know different definitions and different understanding of what we thought you're going to deliver and then what you're delivering. And that opens up a conversation around, oh, you're not delivering, you're under delivering, we won't pay you, we want the money back, here's a chargeback, blah 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 blah. If you are, and then it invites also scope creep, which is a situation where you were thinking that you're going to deliver X and the client was thinking you're going to deliver Y, and so they keep adding other stuff to your contract because they thought that's going to be part of the campaign. So when you have a contract with very specific detailed elements of it, very specific scope of the contract, then that is preventing you from the scope creep. Whenever you have a conversation about it and there's a clear expectation and clear scope, this is what you're doing as a consultant, and this is the role responsibility of a client, which by the way has to be in the contract, both sides. Contracts are by, there's it's for two people or at least two parties, and so you have to set the expectations and roles and responsibilities of both of them. So in my contracts, I do set expectations to our clients as well, so that they will show up for the call, so that they will put the work in, and then otherwise I can't be working with them. Like, just they have to put the work in, they have to put the reps in, right? And so it's an exchange of values of value. And then if I'm going to put the work in, but it all will only work if the client shows up and puts the work in as well. So my contracts are for two parties, obviously. So it's not just like my promise of what I'm going to deliver. It's more so what I'm delivering, how I'm doing this, and this is my expectation of the client, to be polite, to be professional, to show up on calls, to deliver, to always ask questions, to do, right? So you have to make sure that those both sides are kind of covered, and it opens up a conversation in the beginning of the relationship about around expectations and around the scope, around the pricing. So for example, you might have, and some people will say this, which I don't agree with, absolutely not. They will say, if you are asking people to sign a contract, this will add more friction and you might lose the sale because you start conversations about the expectations and people might just get a little bit scary or whatever, and they will not sign a contract and then you lose the sale. I'd rather lose a sale from someone who's not a good fit and would have unreasonable expectations and always result in a scope creep than have a tough conversation with someone who understands and we can agree on the terms and go through the relationship with no issues, and everyone is clear on like their responsibilities, expectations, pricing, and stuff like that. So it's better to have that conversation in the beginning of the relationship, even if that means you will delay getting the actual payment, than it is to be in the middle of a project and just learn that the client thought that you're going to deliver this and the client is leaving because they were expecting something else. So that creates a whole snowball effect of issues, problems, bad relationship, chargebacks, asking for refunds, yada yada yada. I don't recommend that. I've been there, done that. Not recommended. The more detailed you are when it comes to the scope and what is included, what is involved, what is the definition of campaign, whatever, I'm using campaign as an example, the better, because then again it prevents the scope creep. If something is not falling inside of the scope, it's then easier for you to kind of blame, quote unquote, the contract. Say, hey, according to the contract we're doing this, looks like what you're asking is outside of a contract, or sorry, outside of a scope. I'm happy to scope it for you and quote it for you. And that gives you a really nice professional way out of a conversation around like, oh, Mike, can you also do this? No, I can't, because we haven't agreed on this, right? So the more strict you are, the more defined you are, the more practical and the more detailed you are when it comes to defining what's in the contract, what we're doing, what are the terms, how often we're gonna meet, what's included, what's not, the easier it will be for you, and then easier it will be for you to say this falls out of the scope. I'm happy to scope it. I'm happy to quote it for you, right? So don't worry about signing long-term contracts as well. You can always terminate a contract. There's rules for termination of the contract as well. There's also ways to lock people into the contract as well. So for example, when it comes to my 12 months programs, those programs, like if you are deciding to be inside of this program, you are deciding to be in this program. There's like, it's not that you like change your mind 6 months in, right? So what I do the 2 months love it or leave it approach, where we're kind of testing grounds, both me and my client, like, from both sides. If we decide to stick together for the next 12 months, that is, it's happening. And then I am dedicated for the next 12 months for the client. There's a scope, and the value of that contract is X. So for example, it's going to be $35,000 value of the contract. And to ease your pain, if you will, I'm allowing you to pay for that contract in installments, monthly installments. But if you decide at some point, like, hey, I'm no longer interested in working with you, and you as in me, I haven't done anything wrong in a contract, you just change your mind, then you still owe me that amount of money, because we agreed to work together. I have dedicated my time, my production schedule to work with you. So you cannot just walk away, right? So obviously there's situations where you would allow a person to walk away and terminate a contract, blah, blah, blah. But we also need to prevent ourselves from people who are just, of a questionable, ethics and ethical spine, who would just come in, download your stuff, listen to you, and then change their mind, right? Obviously, if there's personal reasons, personal, circumstances, health issues, whatever, then it's up to you whether you want to kind of do something about it. But from a legal perspective, you want to make sure that you are protecting your business. You have to look at this as a professional productized business with a product that you sell, right? So when you buy a product, there is a time, there's 60, 90 days for returns, but after that, like, you bought it, you have to pay for it. And even if you're paying in installments, if you no longer are using your MacBook Pro, nobody cares. You still have to pay because you have the MacBook Pro. Same with my consulting product. Like, I run a product-based business. You want this product? Here I am. I am making myself available to you. I'm giving you access to my portal. I'm giving you access to my IP. I'm giving you access to my skills. You can show up for calls, but if you change your mind, it's not my problem. It's your problem, your decision, right? So being a little bit stricter on that sense is yeah, it's just helpful, right? And so um, the more the and in terms of pricing, again, the higher the price, the more pressure there is for, on the client to actually show up and do the work. So that's when it comes to, to contracts. I do have the calculators, or like the offer calculators, like how do I calculate my monthly, my weekly, and my annual. If you want an access to that, let me know. There's also a contract value calculator I have designed. There's also available in the show notes, so let me know if you want access to it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, just kind of like a big picture overview of contracts and how to approach that. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.